Nashville. So you're now bouncing around LA, Nashville, or mostly Nashville because you're a writer more.
Yeah,
How
well,
is that? Tell us about Nashville.
the Nashville thing is probably the biggest aspect of my life, if I'm being honest, in terms of creativity or my work. I first went to Nashville in about 2005, just purely on my own, just on a whim, and just I didn't know anyone there, but I'd had this sort of fascination with it being the kind of hub and epicenter of songwriting.
The level of musicianship is extraordinary.
It's extraordinary, and I fell in love with the place. And to be honest, I've lived there on and off the past 10 years a couple of times, like in terms of like I've done like a year there and then come back, and I've done like another 6 months or whatever. So I've bounced back quite a lot. I've built up a whole other life there in a way of work that I do, and friends and all the rest of it. And I try and get there every sort of few months, so it kind of you give the impression that you never left, kind of thing. The whole city is built on songwriting, and it's an amazing place to be, and very creative and good atmosphere.
Fantastic. So a bit like Inspector Clouseau, you just like put on the other hat and
that part of America. You know, like everywhere in the world has its issues at the moment. We do hear all the rest of it, but there is a brilliant. What Nashville has got, it's kind of a sort of a bastion of sort of creative and liberal thinking amongst set against a very conservative place, like Austin is in Texas. But it's
like Austin.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's very cool. It's very hip, and its work ethic is
fantastic,
unrelenting, and I love being there.
Well, because you hear about the stories of people, Muscle Shoals and places like that. I'm like, this is the gods. This is our mythology.
Yeah.
These are the places where people, very humbly come in and make history.
Yeah.
So one day I would love to go there.
You must, and it's incredibly welcoming. And as a songwriter, what I love about it is that you get a chance, but you have to behave yourself. And I mean, on a kind of human level, but you have to show up on time, and you have to, because if you don't, then one of the other 1,000 people that have just arrived in town are going to write. They're going to work hard to write that song, and it does take a minute. But I actually just had my first #1 country song, and I've been going there for nearly 15 years. And
what's that called?
It's called "What If I Never Get Over You," and it was cut by a band called Lady Antebellum.
Wow!
And so that was actually just in January. So I was there just before all this stuff kicked off.
That's extraordinary. So, I mean, that's such a big dream. That would be.
It was. Yeah, it is a dream. It's a good. And to be honest, for me, it was like. It was emotional as well, but I was, I wrote it with some dear friends of mine there, and they do things differently over there. The country music as well is they show a lot of gratitude and reverence to songwriting and songwriters, whereas in the pop world, it's a bit more like the ego of the artist sometimes, but. That's what's magic about Nashville and country music. And, they throw a big party, and the band play the song with the writers, and I get to bring home some nice plaques and stuff to give my mum and dad. And it's a good moment. It's good. It's been a long time.
A long way from Watford.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think the role of a producer is like a director? You should be able to pretty much do, I'm thinking like Billy Wilder or something. I was a film editor for years, so
sure.
He can do such different films, and they're amazing. Or do you think a producer should stick to a couple of genres? And
I think it's interesting. I was just talking about that with a friend actually who's just come back from recording some stuff in Nashville, and I think there's merits in both schools of thought to just do your thing and really do that well. I think. I'm not just speaking for myself, but I know a lot of my colleagues are in the same boat. A lot of us do different things. Like on a given day, I might be doing a session in Nashville where we're just writing a pretty much traditional country song. And then I might be working with someone else in Nashville as more of a pop thing, or someone here that's very pop or not so. I wouldn't profess to be able to do R&B stuff or whatever it is, but I like to think that I can try my hand across the board, as it were.
Okay. So as a writer, it's interesting to see how people, sometimes you get these strange songs that someone does for someone else.
Yes.
Tell me about what you think you have your project, which is called The Bonfires, which, bizarrely, I look at, all of your production skills, and we'll get on to Paloma Faith in a minute, in the next take, with huge orchestrations and stuff like that. But it's mostly just you and an acoustic guitar. Is
pretty
that
much.
right, or?
Yeah, pretty much. It's and also the Bonfires for me is kind of pardon the expression, but it's just this thing that kind of just like burns away in the background, and it's a good exercise for me to, or a good vehicle rather for me to just have some ideas that I either keep to myself or that keep me creating and fresh. And the other benefit of it is that I think other artists and other writers like to work with people that they also see as an artist. They don't necessarily always want to work with someone who's a bit too much of a 9-to-5 songwriter. And I think more and more now, especially with the streaming capabilities and people are able to put their own music out with much more ease, there's no excuse to not do that if, and sort of use that creative muscle. So that The Bonfires is that for me.
Sort of, but 50 years ago, you'd be in the, whatever it is, the building in New York where they all...
Oh, the Brill building, yes.
The Brill, where they sort of fabricated these fantastic tracks.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess, I saw a track of yours, which I really loved, called Romeo. That's an old track.
Oh, well, that is old, yeah.
I think Golden is a new one. Is Romeo particularly meaningful for you? Or for me, it was. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it's funny, that song keeps always in a nice way, it always comes back or someone mentions it and it seems to connect with people. I probably would like to revisit that and just up the production of it a bit. It was at a different time. I think I just, I invariably have in my life just come out of a relationship, and I tend to sort of... it was that song sort of moves people quite a bit, and Golden was actually from a similar era, but that was about that was about my brother moving to South Africa actually, but my Romeo was about another relationship I'd sort of probably fucked up and tried to turn into a song.
But that's good. A lot of it's not technique and honesty. So I kind of got that about Golden. And some of your other favorite collaborations, I've looked at a number of things you've done, but what are some of your favorite, apart from Lola?
Some of my favorite stuff. I tend to, I think some of my favorite stuff, my thing, I guess, and I'm not the only person in this world, but who does it this way, but I like to be kind of an additional bandmate for the day or for 2 days or however long I'm working with a writer or with an artist or whatever. And I think some of my best experiences of that have been with an artist here called James Bay, who I've done a lot of work with over the past sort of several years. Met him very early in his career. And
is that the Holding Back?
Hold Back the River is his, and unfortunately that one wasn't mine, but we've done a lot. I produced his first ever sort of EP. It was like an acoustic EP. And from that point on, we were just, we became mates, and we still are, and we chat loads about music and football and all sorts, but you produced
a newer one of his.
I did, yeah. So I did his second record, Electric Light, which I produced with James, and then we also very excitingly got to work with Paul Epworth on that same project, and sort of kind of took what we'd done for a few months to Paul's studio in Crouch End, a place called The Church, which is probably, if not in the world, but definitely Europe and the UK, one of the finest and the most amazing studios. So in terms of collaboration, that was
a producer.
Paul Epworth is he's responsible for he co-wrote and produced Rolling in the Deep for Adele and Skyfall, the James Bond song, and loads of other huge things.
Okay, well, it's right up my alley and probably yours. So.
Yes, so it was, in terms of collaboration and favourite times, that was a special time, because that was like a summer that we all sort of spent together, basically. And I have this sort
And
of...
do tell me. So, if you want to expand on others, but also that you become a band member, would you say that you're a writer or a producer, or this kind of guest band member that kind of slips in there? And
in my best, the best version I think of myself is when I'm a bit of everything, and it's just kind of, it descends into or ascends into a place of everyone just hanging out and jamming, and we look back after a week and we've written 10 songs or more, and they've all got a sound and a thing. That's where I'm at my best, where I can sort of bed in for a bit.
I wanted to talk a bit about Paloma Faith.
Yes.
Kind of a big project, so different from an acoustic guitar.
Yes.
It could be said also about the transitioning from James Bay to Lola or something like that.
Yeah.
But, can you describe there's a bit of, the sort of bond or scale of arrangement. She's very vital. She's very sort of in your face.
Yes.
She's very cool too. Very strange. Tell us about the project and how you approached it and the arrangements.
That was an interesting one, actually. It's a good one because it kind of highlights this song in particular. This song Surrender actually highlights particularly the nature of the business, and also the part of the business that I'm in, I guess, in terms of songwriting. So this is the song that I did on the album, and I co-produced it with a friend of mine, Johnny Harris, is a song that we wrote maybe a year prior to Paloma Faith hearing it. We wrote it with Rag and Bone Man. And we'd done a whole Whistles and Bells demo of it, and this was before Rag and Bone Man had his success. So he was kind of a new artist that it was being kind of sent around the various writers up and down the UK and all the rest of it. And we decided to do this kind of very sort of bombastic, big song with a kind of big lyric and hang it on the hat of a word like surrender, and it'd be this whole kind of almost like you said, like a Bond-like thing, but a big guy with a soulful voice singing it.
Right.
It didn't fit for his project, unfortunately. We were quite excited about him doing it, and I think he was as well. It just didn't quite line up with stuff sonically and all the rest of it.
Okay.
And there's a similar management company involved, I think. So they sent it to Paloma, and she heard it and was all about it, and it was great. And it was another brilliant example of how quickly things can happen. She came down to the studio, I think, the next week. She brought some of her backing singers, and they sort of went to town on it, and Paloma sang fantastically, and Johnny and I sort of pieced it all together. And that's kind of what you hear, really. It was quite a quick process.
And what's the arrangement? You're saying, because you didn't produce the whole album or anything like that?
No, I
just Surrender.
Just Surrender, yeah. I didn't.
And what's the tracks on it? Is it guitars, bass, drums? Is there strings?
As with a lot of my stuff, there's a shit ton. But I was raised my dad played the only album pretty much in the car was Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. So it's kind of like symphomatic. Just orchestral chaos and opulence, and I'm all about that.
It's like John Barry.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I live for that.
That's what I love.
I live for that, and it's difficult in the modern pop world where it needs to be much tighter and about maybe 2 or 3 key elements. But with that song, with Surrender, it stemmed from the original writing session, us just kind of having a laugh together and being like, how dramatic can we go? How over the way can we shoot this thing?
Right.
And it stuck, because what often happens is you get that people love the song, and then someone at the label or somewhere will be like, okay, that's amazing, but can you just dial it back a bit? And then you do that to placate everybody and play the game, and then they're like, yeah, it's sort of lacking something. You're like, yeah, well, that's because you just told us to get rid of all the shit. So we reinstate that. So it's kind of, there's some string samples on there, there's bells and another gospel choir plug-in, I think, playing on the keyboard, and then actual gospel singers, and kind of a thunderous sort of just a beat that just goes. Basically, it's not it's not particularly cutting edge or weird. It's just it just thumps basically, and that's what we wanted.
I'm going to have to listen to it again. I think I listened to it and I liked it a lot. And if, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the other tracks are these very big sounds, strings, and
Yes.
backing vocals, and I thought, wow, that's so different from In the Wild, and fun. Great,
Yeah,
very
a
cool.
bit different.
I kind of see you. Maybe you're a bit younger than me, but did you hang out with Amy and Camden or
Not really. No, I wasn't really in that scene. I was a session musician around that time. I was playing lead guitar for Duffy in about 2007, 2008 through to like 2010. So the first album cycle, the whole tour, and which was an unbelievable experience with some of my best mates. So that was what I kind of disappeared.
What years were that?
That was the end of 2007 till kind of mid 2010.
And you were Duffy's lead guitarist?
Yes. So
I mean, she was really as big as anything.
She was. It was all. Not only was it there for her. I mean, she had it. She was selling millions of albums.
And where did you grow up? This is a funny question, but this is going to be earlier in North London.
That's good. I grew up in North London, out kind of near sort of Watford, out that way.
Okay.
Went to university in Liverpool. I went to the Paul McCartney sort of into the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts for sort of university.
Oh wow! Did he fund that or?
Yes, it was his old preparatory school that he went to when he was much younger.
Wow!
And he sort of invested in it in the sort of mid-90s. So I was one of the first sort of intake there, and it's affiliated to Liverpool John Moores University, so you get a university accreditation with it. But he didn't spare any expense with the facilities and the studios and stuff. And I was there for 3 years, so it was pretty.
Okay. And how did you get from that to Duffy?
So I left there, and like a lot of students repaying student loans, I had to get a job quite quickly. I was making tea at a couple of record labels for a summer, and then I joined a function band where I was playing at weddings and bar mitzvahs for about a year. And then my two best mates said, well, they've just started working with this girl who's signed to Universal, and they need like an extra keyboard player, actually. So I went down to audition, but there was already a keyboard player there, so I fortunately could jump on the guitar, and I ended up joining that band. Duffy offered me the gig and stuff, and then
okay. I'm been familiar with your work through Lola Lennox. And I was really impressed with the writing and the production. And I think you both sort of did, voice writing and music. Can you tell me, to me, it was, wow, okay, it's a ballad, but she has a sort of classical lilt, and it was that lovely mix of something taking you somewhere very new.
Yes.
Could you talk about that production and the writing and how that all came about?
Sure. I think the best way, not to explain it, but to kind of unpack it slightly, I met Lola, and I'm probably going to get this slightly wrong in terms of the specific date, but it was probably about, must be about 3 or 4 years ago even, and I was on a songwriting trip to Los Angeles, where Lola is based predominantly, and it had been a writing session had been put together by my publisher and Lola's management, and we kind of, as I do every day, and as many songwriters and producers do every day, they meet other writers and write songs, and or artists and all the rest of it. So I met Lola at my publishing company in Santa Monica, with Universal Publishing, and they have a writing room there and a studio, and we were actually put into the main studio there, which is huge. It's like way too big for like a first meeting, and it's almost sort of like kind of like outlandishly grandiose, and huge recording desk. There's an engineer there, this guy called Mike Fenn, and
is that the old Capitol Tower or?
No, this is actually that's more central. This is out. It's a newer building, but it's a similarly daunting, probably. And we just chat. Most of my writing sessions when I've just met someone, or even if I know them very well, they always tend to, and I feel should start with a cup of tea and a conversation about life, at least for, time is slightly of the essence sometimes, but at least for a good half an hour to an hour, you meet someone, you chat.
Yeah.
And the song often resides in those first few moments of a conversation where you're sort of like learning about why someone lives where they live, and you get into like a bit of family history, you get a bit into like where they're at relationship wise, and you basically have to become very, very fast friends. And it's daunting, but it's also, it's quite exciting sometimes, because you know that you're both listening to each other and kind of subconsciously kind of like, that could be a good lyric. And I just remember Lola talking about stuff and I was talking about stuff, and we just kind of started to come up with this idea of creating this other world where a relationship might work better than it does in regular 9 to 5 everyday life. And that's where the concept came from for In the Wild, and it just snowballed quite quickly. And I think we wrote it sort of a bit on guitar to start with, and Lola, like you said, she's got this very almost old school soulful way of singing and presenting stuff. And kind of the song came pretty quick after that point, from what I remember. So
after that, you're playing on the piano, I sense. What is your first instrument?
It's sort of, I did learn the piano first, but I was very scared of my piano teacher, so I moved to guitar very quickly. And so they're kind of equally on that. And I've sort of got into playing everything else. Not everything else, but like, drums and bass and other bits and pieces, like one does when they're just sort of sitting around a studio a lot. But piano probably first.
And she's playing a bit of guitar, or just singing?
Just singing, I think, mostly on that day, and just sitting by the piano and sitting with the guitar myself. Yeah.
So then how long did it take you to write? Did you write it in that one sitting?
Yes, we did. We only had one day together, and like I said, we were in this huge bloody studio. And the irony of that, and us kind of only just meeting for the first time, it's just, that wasn't lost on us. And I think once we'd established a theme and a storyline, it felt like that feeling you get, or one hopes to get, when you're back at school and you're just kind of brainstorming, and this teacher is writing up loads of words on the, if we're talking about being in the wild, like, what does that make us think of? Does that mean, then that's kind of how it went. And I think we wrote the song in its entirety, probably, I don't want to say like, the classic line, the song was done in 10 minutes, but it was probably about an hour tops, I would imagine.
Wow. I'm so impressed by what you're telling me, just because to actually get together with someone and do that. So how did you come out of there? Like, you came out of there thinking, well, that was, you're buzzing, no?
Absolutely buzzing. And it's, you get that feeling of, not another school analogy, but of like, that feeling when you sort of finished all your homework and you can kind of chill. It's kind of that feeling there, but we were conscious of the fact that we only had the day, and we had this huge studio, so we quite quickly got to work at like putting stuff down
on that day.
On that day, well, I think we had to, and I think I'm a massive believer and fan of like striking while the iron is hot, and like capturing the vocal, capturing just whatever the song is making you feel and think musically, because that is almost as important as nailing that lyric on the first day.
Wow.
Capturing the moment, I guess. So we got to work pretty quick, and had maybe we left that later that afternoon about 5 o'clock, and we probably had pretty much what you hear is, in terms of instrumentation, barring maybe the drums and stuff, was quite a lot of it was done there and then.
But the drums is a loop. Has it changed the mix?
There's some loop, and I tried my best to play some real drums over it as well. So you'll hear there's some drum fills that every now and then, which were probably me. Yeah. It sounds like me falling down the stairs, but it is actually at some drums as well. Okay.
I thought they were electronic.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. Mostly so, but there's some other bits going
on. How long did it take then to mix and produce? And has the mix changed, now? Like sometimes they over Gilda Lily, and
yes,
sometimes the mix before the video is way better.
Well, that's a really good point, actually, and especially on this song. And there's many songs that I've worked on and different things where this also happens. But as I said, this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember the exact date, but I can find that out for you. So that's my mum phoning me. But
okay, if you want, do you want to take that? I'm going to stop and check
cool.
this.
No, it's absolutely fine. I've declined. It's all good.
Okay.
And we, so basically, I left LA, went back home to London, and I think within the next sort of few weeks or so had kind of like pretty much put together in another studio here that I was working at the time. I'd added some acoustic guitars, I'd added like some background vocals and a bit more sort of razzmatazz. Right. And it got to a pretty good place, so much so that Lola and her management and people were like really happy with it. And then I think there was probably, and this is no slight on anyone, it's just the way things go whilst they're sort of trying to figure out, more songs and all this. There was probably like another 1.5, 2 year gap before we ever thought about it again.
Right.
And then at which point I was doing a bit more work with a friend of mine called Charley Russell at a studio in London, and we got a call from Lola's management asking if we could like take a look at the song again and just polish it up. And then we got an email the next day saying that Lola's mum, Annie, wanted to pop along and just give us a few thoughts, because Lola was in the LA, but she'd written down some of her stuff. So me and my mate Charley were like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Why not? So what happened next was probably one of the most brilliant and inspiring afternoons of my life, and possibly Charley's, where Annie Lennox came and joined us and was not only so gracious and so spot on in everything that she advised us on. She was also a very a brilliant mum, and I mean that in like the best sense of it. She was there, but not as herself. She was there because as a kind of an envoy for her daughter, just to sort of get a few ideas across that Lola wanted to try, and also some stuff that her mum wanted to try. And it was really inspiring to see someone who doesn't need this in a studio in Soho all afternoon on a sort of rainy Tuesday, but she was there for a few hours and was brilliant. And so what you hear now is pretty much where we got it to that day, barring a few tweaks.
And you're pretty happy with everything now, and so
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had the song come out like pretty much the day that we'd written it. I would have been happy, because I'm always a fan of like things that just feel like in the moment. But it's great.
One more. I mean, how's it going? How's it received? I thought it's great, but
I think it's been perceived great. These things are, everything depends a lot on, infrastructure and label and all these political things. But ultimately, everyone that's heard the song is into it. I think we're in a very weird time in terms of being able to promote stuff as fully as one would if normal service was happening. And I hope that once the clouds lift and people are back out on the streets, then I'm sure Lola will be back out there and promoting stuff and other songs. I know she's got some great other stuff, and it's some of these things are better. I if they're a bit of a slow burn and a longer build. Sure. The foundation's better.
Well, you get the sense the management company was, trying to do that. I think, remarkable. I think you did an amazing job. That it was done in one day just blows me away. So apart from James, sorry, jumping in, but you did, I'm thinking of, Linkin Park, Paloma Faith, any others like that? I think James Bay sounds like a mate.
No, he is, and it's a brilliant thing, because we just get to write, and I'm very lucky that he still wants to sort of write and hang out with me. And I think the Linkin Park thing was it's the same philosophy of like just trying to be there because they want you there and on based on merit, but also because it's you got to turn up and behave yourself and be a good hang. But that was literally like being an additional bandmate. I was there for like over a sort of 6-month period. I did like maybe a a few weeks in total with them at the studio that they were doing their album out in Los Angeles. And it was unbelievable because I'm there with these guys who I listened to in the 90s, kind of like,
right.
you know, and like would like overly emotionally kind of scream along to their choruses and stuff. Right. And it was a very special time. And, you know, at that level, it's not tense, but it's just like, you know, it's got to be good. Otherwise they'll just do something else. You know, it's pretty focused, laser focused, which is great.
Okay. And that project's called One More Light, is that correct?
Yes, that was the
album.
Yeah, that was the album.
Do you produce just the tracks you write, or you did the whole album with Linkin?
I was just a writer with Linkin Park, but we kind of the band self-produced that record, so I get like co-production and then some additional production credit. But in general, my job description, I would say, and in this order, is that I'm a songwriter, producer. Okay. I have done production of songs that I've not written, but more often than not, I produce things that I've written. Okay,
got it. Now, it's so trippy, this thing that, you know, what is it? No One Can Save Me? And when did you do that? In 2017, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was, it was kind of, I mean, that whole project was obviously... very much, yeah.
Right.
It was very emotional, obviously, in the aftermath of it, because they'd only really just got going with the promotion. They were about to embark on a huge global tour for about 2 years, and then sadly, obviously, tragically, Chester Bennington, the lead singer, took his own life, and it was.
What's the time frame? Sorry.
Yeah,
you record in 2017 and. In early 2017.
Yes, it would have been early 2017, and then I think the album. I'm probably going to be wrong here, but I think the album had come out, and I think they'd done a handful of shows to start the tour. They played one in London. They'd done something in Asia, and something in the States, and then unfortunately, shockingly, Chester took his own life, and I think the look of another 2 years out on the road and all the pressures that would make a combination of things, but it all got obviously got too much for him, and it was tragic, absolutely tragic.
And he was a great guy. You hung out with him. He was happy. He was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's very easy in hindsight to say, like, you know, maybe I thought this at the time, you know, but you don't think like that at the time. You just think, well, this is awesome. I'm with the band and.
Right,
you know, everyone was there.
Little egotist.
Yeah, he was on great form, and you know, I think you can tell with individuals when they have struggles or if they have like a dark place they can go to. But he was total class, as they all were, and as all of the people that work with the band are, and it was and is still, incredibly sad. But I remain close with some of the other band members, and it's.
Tell us about the concert. You sang Battle Hymn, which you wrote or co-wrote? Is that?
I co-wrote that with the band, but the main writers at that time would have been Mike Shinoda and Brad Delson in the band. So we wrote.
What do they play, those guys in the band?
So Brad plays guitar, and Mike is like, he's sort of the band leader. He does all the sort of keyboards and synths and sort of rap stuff. It was an extraordinary experience. I actually sang 2 songs. I sang "Nobody Can Save Me Now" and "Battles Symphony," and it was just like, I mean, I still to this day like have to pinch myself thinking about it, because I'm there and I know that I've worked with the band and all the rest of it. I always feel like I've got this sort of like slightly imposter sort of syndrome. Like, because I'm looking around and like Alanis Morissette, who's like one of the biggest selling artists of all time, and I was obsessed with Jagged Little Pill and all the rest of it. Right. You know, she's on before me, and then Blink-182 are on after me, and all these things. And I'm just like this guy from Northwest London. And I'm just standing there by myself, and you know, and Mike, particularly in the band, is very supportive of me and Brad, and they wanted me to play. So I played. I was like a utility musician for the rest of the show as well. I was playing guitar and keyboards for other people. So I'm up on this stage at the Hollywood Bowl. Like, to be perfectly frank, I think like, what the fuck am I doing here? I know.
So it was trippy.
No, it was trippy. And what was really actually beautiful about the night, apart from the fact, in addition to the fact, it was genuinely a beautiful, magical evening and tribute. My best friend from back home, also called John, and his wife, who I've known since I was born, their mums are all my mum's best friends. He'd just moved to LA. And so he was there with his wife, and I'd got him like a nice place to sit and all the rest of it.
At the Hollywood Bowl.
At the Hollywood Bowl. And I just remember looking out on this quite big crowd, and the first person I saw was like my best friend. And he's looking at me like crying and laughing and thinking like, what is going on here?
Right.
It was
emotions are all over
the place. And I'll never forget it. I will never forget it. And I think I was very, very privileged and fortunate to be asked and to be part of something and to get up there with these bands that I'd spent most of my life watching and still do. So it was ridiculous.
Tight. I thought it was, I hate to be so clinical. It looked fab.
It was.
It looked really well.
It was. And
beautifully done.
It was a great celebration of Chester's life that night. It was uplifting. Very.
Well, that's beautiful. I'm going to move on to, I'm trying to think of, we somehow made that into ending on a positive note. I'm not quite sure how you did that, but that's good. Okay. Do you have a studio? What's your setup? What do you like to use?
As I speak to you now, due to various social issues, it's a laptop and a microphone and a tiny keyboard and a guitar. But in general, I have a space in West Hampstead in North London where there's a complex of studios run by a fantastic writer and producer called Jimmy Hogarth, who's done lots of wonderful things over the years. And
what's that called?
The studio is called Hoxa, Hoxa.
Huh, okay.
And there's lots of us down. There's about sort of 15 of us who kind of all work, and we all kind of congregate in the kitchen. And there's a great wine bar around the corner, which is potentially lethally dangerous, but we do some work and do some drinking.
Nice. Okay. So do you have any go-to instruments? What's your DAW? What do you like to record with?
I'm on Pro Tools, but I can get around Logic as well. But Pro Tools is where it's at. It's just the first thing I learned. I think that tends to be what happens. You just stick with what you've grown up
right. with. I think I did one project, but it was someone else was recording it on Pro Tools. So
I see. Yeah.
I bought a Pro Tools too. To record and sort of hired a Neumann to record at home. Yes. But I work on Logic and you don't find Cubase is better for strings or?
No. To be honest, I feel like Pro Tools it feels like you're at the desk.
It's the real deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything? Any synths or any hardware you love, or you're more a writer?
I must admit, Charlie, I'm not the most technical.
Okay.
And anyone who works with me would attest to that. But I just love hitting some shit and making stuff work. It doesn't matter how good it is.
And you're in London right now?
I'm in London. I'm in North London, and I sort of split my time between here and Nashville in the States mostly. But I'm here, and I am self-isolating, and it's an interesting time and a good time to sort of reflect and remember. How's
that happened with? I mean, everyone's been online, right? Selling their songs, or I don't want to be cynical because I think most of the artists come from the right place. But how's it affected Nashville? Have people been, doing tributes, or how's it affected the mood? Are we becoming more human, or?
I think it's a good question. I think it's definitely affected. I think in a very on a basic level, I think we're all, I suppose a lot of the people, obviously, that I'm friends with there and people that I work with there and here in London, in the UK, we're all kind of naturally quite sort of sensitive souls and reflective. And I think that's definitely been one of the effects of this time and this kind of period of isolation. We've sort of maybe gone a bit more introvert or extrovert even with our sort of feelings on the world around us. And I think I'm quite positive. Obviously there's some shocking stuff happening and it's very challenging, but I'm confident that it's actually going to bring out a lot of some good material. That's my hope.
Oh, okay. So you're like me. It's all about the creativity. It's funny
Yes.
but I thought I mean, personally, I do feel a bit like, after watching Schindler's List or talking to you, I do sort of feel that need to connect with people. Not to say anything, just, wow, are you feeling it too or something like that?
Definitely. I think we're all in this sort of thing of solidarity, and we're not used to it as regardless of like what it is that we both do for a living or whatever, like, as human beings in the modern world.
Exactly.
We're not used to this kind of outpouring of solidarity and a common cause, a very common cause. And I think it's pretty refreshing, as much as it is daunting and frightening.
And as much as it seems to be showing maybe the flaws.
Absolutely.
Definitely that. And also, I think, they always say, and I suppose you're in my generation may joke about people who say you've got to be grateful, but it doesn't half show, shows you all the things you take for granted and all the people.
Oh, yeah.
So, and are you doing anything involved with that, like streaming or working with other artists on projects?
I actually, just before speaking to you, I just finished a song with someone using another application, using this thing Zoom, and it was actually all right. I've been kind of avoiding it for about 2 weeks because I sort of like enjoying kind of just not enjoying the isolation so much, because I'm by myself at the minute. My family are sort of scattered around London and other parts of the world, but I've been enjoying just sort of dusting off old songs and like with my laptop and just sort of working on stuff and kind of getting back to basics. But I've just done a songwriting session with someone, and it was pretty cool. There was, a compensation for the delay and all the rest of it. I think if you're writing with someone new for the first time, it could be a bit trickier because you don't quite understand each other's rhythms, as it were, in terms of writing and communication, and
body language.
Yeah, definitely. But the person I've just been writing with, I write with a lot, and it was more kind of just chasing a couple of other older ideas, and also and nice to see someone's face and chat, to be honest.
And you found it, it was pretty good for a first go.
Yes, and I would sort of wouldn't rule out doing some more in the coming days, weeks, and possibly months ahead.
Okay, good.
It was okay.
I think we're going to wrap up. It's been such a pleasure. Can you tell me anything you're working on now? Anything we could look forward to?
Sure. I'm doing. I've been working quite a bit with doing some new stuff with James Bay. I've been working on with this girl Maisie Peters, who's really cool, and Lily Moore is another girl who's also fantastic. So lots of. It's all very different, and it's all. Then I go to Nashville, I do completely different things, but it's all.
Wow.
It's all for the same purpose.
Okay, and you don't find it takes a while to readjust?
It can, but I quite like I like feeling out of my depth a bit, out of my comfort zone. I think it's a good way to be as a human every now and then.
A little bit like you're learning.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I think so.
Extraordinary. Or adapting or growing.
Exactly.
Okay, it's a bit like traveling with me. I travel so much, and it's like being born again.
It is, and it is. You go up to people in restaurants that you wouldn't talk to if you were just hanging out at your house or in your local street all the time, because you've taken a risk and taken the plunge and spent some money on a flight. You might as well engage with the culture.
You're not taking it for granted at that point.
Exactly.